Are you in your 20s and feeling a bit overwhelmed or stuck? Or perhaps, like myself, you're looking back at your 20s with a bit of hindsight. Either way, I have 7 things that I wish I knew in my 20s that can make life a bit easier for you, and I just wanted to share them with you. So, from understanding the power of risk taking to developing meaningful relationships, these 7 things will give you an insight in how to make the most of your 20s and beyond. So make sure to stay to the end of the video too, because I've added an 8th bonus one that is incredibly important that I only thought about as I was recording this video. So let's just get straight into it. So the first thing I wish I knew in my 20s was money isn't everything. And I know this is easy to throw around willy-nilly right now as I have money, but let me explain why. So being in my 30s now, money is not really a concern for me. I've got an agency that does 7 figures. I'm able to support my family and look after my family, which is the most important thing to me. And I have enough to be comfortable, but that wasn't the case in my 20s. I was a brokey, and all I ever wished for and cared about was getting more money. And I just want to say something. It is really okay to be broke in your 20s. Did you know that the average age of the first time millionaire is actually 37? And honestly, all me trying to get rich in my 20s did was made me susceptible to scams and get rich quick schemes and short-term thinking. And if I had just put all that time and energy I did chasing dollars back in my 20s into focusing and building long-term assets, knowing full well that they may not yield results till well in the future, with the amount of energy and lack of commitments I had back then, I'd probably be 10 times wealthier than I am now. And this leads me to the second thing I wish I learned in my 20s, and that is I needed to take more risks when I was in my 20s. And the reason for this is as you get older and have commitments, the risk of ruin is significantly higher. And the effects of the risk not paying off are much longer lasting. So taking risk can help you challenge yourself and grow into the person you want to be. Because let's face it, moving across the country to chase a dream or a goal is a lot easier when you have minimal commitments in, say, your 20s. I think another important thing to understand is that taking risks in your 20s allows you to learn from mistakes before they become too costly. Because when you're in your 20s, you're dealing with smaller dollar figures, and thus these risks are generally smaller. When you get to your 30s and you start to make the same mistakes as I'm talking about you should be making in your 20s, they will cost you significantly more. And let me give you an example of that. If I wanted to learn a new skill or start a new business in my 30s now that I didn't do in my 20s, I have the risk of the fact that I have a family and I have commitments and I have a house and I have mortgages and a business and things like that. It's not easy to go and take those risks. Let's say there was $1 million opportunity on the other side of the country. I can't just pack bags and travel. I've got to pack my family. I've got to make sure that everything's tied up here before I go. There's schooling and things like that. So you can take a lot more risks in your 20s and make sure that you take advantage of those opportunities. And if they're mistakes and they don't work out, it's not going to cost you that much. And by the time you get to your 30s, you would have recovered and you would have more time to recover. And that leads me to the next reason why I think you should take more risks in your 20s is you have more time to recover. So your ability to put in work is much higher in your 20s. You just have more stamina, you're hungrier, you don't have the commitments, you don't have the risk issues. And so you have more of your working career to recover when things don't go your way. And as you get on in age and as you get into your 30s and your 40s, you don't have as much physical time to recover from costly mistakes. You only can work to up until your 50s or 60s before you start to really lose your stamina. And if you're in your 20s and make a big mistake, it's a lot different to make a mistake in your 30s where you have 10 years less to recover from it. And that's a big thing in your 20s you need to understand. And that's the time to start taking risks. The third thing I wanted to mention here is that keeping up with the Joneses was a complete waste of time for me. Now, the problem is, if you're watching this video, then you're probably like me and you're wired different. I found that in my 30s, I ended up with the American, or in my case, the Australian dream. I had the cars, I had the boat, the caravan, the nice house, the rental property, big TVs. I had all of that. But it's only just recently, and I'm talking like a few months ago, that I realized that keeping up with the Joneses was pretty much a fruitless exercise. You're always gonna find someone that has more things than you. Someone that's richer, that has a bigger boat, that has a bigger car, and better possessions than you, no matter how hard you try. And having that mindset of having the best of everything and having the biggest boat in the car, it forces you to compare yourself to others, leading to feelings of insecurity and self-doubt, which is what I was suffering from. Do you want to know the real reason why keeping up with the Joneses is basically a fruitless exercise? Is because trying to keep up with the Joneses means you're sacrificing time, money, and energy that could be used for important activities such as investing in yourself and building assets and skills that can make you way wealthier now. So in your 20s, you go and get a loan for a car, let's say for instance, and the car's $20,000. Now you'll say you're paying $500 a month off that car, and the only reason you bought that car is because you wanted a nice car. The inside of the car is exactly the same as, this is the big thing about cars, is that when you're sitting inside the car, it looks exactly the same as every other car pretty much. Yes, it may go slightly faster, it might be slightly more reliable, but let's be honest, you bought that car because you wanted to look good in front of other people. That's 99% of the reason people buy cars. And there's nothing wrong with that. I just think that $20,000 or that $500 a month in your 20s that you've gone and you've spent on that car, or that nice pair of kicks or whatever, if you just invested that into yourself and you put that energy, time, and effort into investing into yourself and learning new skills or building assets, by the time you're my age, you can buy that stuff if you really want with money that you actually have and that you've actually earned from developing your skills and developing assets. I just want to clarify this. This applies to me too. If I'd just taken the time, energy, and effort that I wasted trying to collect all this stuff, the shoes, the boat, the caravan, the TV, the cars, the things like that, and I'd just put that money into my own personal growth, I'd probably be a multi-millionaire by now. Now guys, hopefully you're getting some insights and value from this video. And if you are, and you want to see more content like this, make sure to hit the subscribe button now, because you know what YouTube's like. If you don't do it now, then you'll never see my content again or content like it again. So enough about that, let's just get into point 4. And point 4 is developing strong relationships. You've probably seen my video a while back where I talk about having no friends. It's pretty raw. I left it up because a lot of people got value from it, but it makes me uncomfortable to watch, to be fair. But if you want to see that video, you can watch it here. In that video, I talk about how it's so hard in your 30s to make friends because you have commitments. When I was in my 20s, I didn't have the commitments I have now. I didn't have a wife, kids, business, family, cars, boats, blah, 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 like I was saying before. I didn't have those commitments. And I had some amazing friendships in my 20s that I really just let fizzle out. These are friendships I made going to the gym and playing poker after work, and organic relationships that were really fulfilling. And I just let them fizzle out. And the main reason for that is as you get older, those commitments become a big chunk of your life. So, if you have to pick your kids up from school and then take them out on the weekends to play sport, it's actually quite difficult to make time. And all your friends that are the same age are doing the same thing. It's actually quite difficult to make time to do this stuff. I just really wish I committed more time to these friendships that I had in my 20s to try and carry them into my 30s. Because I think if I'd put the effort and time into those friendships, I'd still be good friends with them today. And this is probably the other thing I regretted most that I didn't do in my 20s, was getting out there and meeting more people, because it's a lot easier to do, like I said, when you don't have commitments and you have the time, energy, and you do want to meet new people in your 20s. You don't have the relationship commitments. There's a lot of things you don't have that having friendships fills the gap of. So I just wish I spent more time in my 20s building friendships and relationships that would have carried into my 30s. And that leads to the next thing I want to talk about, which is I wish I invested more into myself. And this ties into taking risks in your 20s, but I really should have taken more time to invest in myself. These days in my 30s, I don't even blink when I see an opportunity to educate myself. But when I was in my 20s, spending $1,000 on getting coaching or upskilling was completely out of my mind. Even if I had the money, I didn't put a priority into investing into myself. I could buy a new pair of shoes for that $1,000. I could buy a stereo system for that $1,000. Why would I go and spend it on coaching or accountability or anything, or upskilling? But I was also happy to spend $999 or $997 on some get rich quick course. And that was the problem, is if I had to choose between $1,000 of proper coaching and proper investment and upskilling, or a $997 course on how to get rich quick, you knew which one I was picking. What I've learned is as you get older, the ROI on your time is super important. Once you start having kids and house and commitments and stuff like that, and as you get older, you get more skilled. And as you get more skilled, you make more money. And I've noticed now, I love gaming. I've always been a gamer, but I'd only get 10, 20, 15 minutes at a time to play games. I remember when I was in my 20s, I would really struggle and to go, do I spend $60 on a computer game or $60 on a console game? Now I'm just like, I'm just gonna go grab it because money's less of an issue for me. My problem is now is I can afford all the stuff I wanted in my 20s. I just don't have the time to do it. And I just wish I sacrificed in other areas to make sure I had the cash to invest in myself, because I know now that the single biggest investment and the single biggest ROI on time you can make in your 30s and onwards is in yourself. So I just wish instead of buying a car stereo system, I'd just taken that $2,000-$3,000 and invested in hard skills so that by the time I was in my 30s, I could fully take advantage of that. I also wish that I spent less time chasing short-term cash grabs and invested more into long-term games. And I spoke about this earlier, but I spent way too much time trying to find get-rich-quick schemes than investing in myself, which is a long-term play, but is one of the few ways to actually guarantee success in life. Now, the next thing I want to talk about, which ties a lot into guaranteeing success in life, is developing good habits early on. If you take one thing from this video, it needs to be this. Learning good habits in your 20s is critical to the success in the future as you get older. We often think of our 20s as a time for fun, exploration, experimentation, and the truth is, it's also a period for laying down the foundations for your future life. Establishing healthy habits in your 20s will give you the best chance of achieving goals such as financial freedom, professional success, and creating meaningful relationships down the road. Good habits such as setting time aside to upskill, exercising regularly, creating and sticking to budgets, saving money, developing new skills can really help set yourself up for a successful future. And learning these habits early on in your 20s can instill discipline and provide direction, as well as a sense of accomplishment. Plus, it helps make life easier as you get into your 30s, where you don't actually have a choice. You have other people that rely on you, and you need to fulfill on the commitments, which forces you to have those habits. My boys, they can't go without food. So I have to wake up and feed them breakfast, whether I want to or not. And if I just taken that thought that other people rely on me to make sure that I do what I do, then I think I'd be a lot further ahead now in my 30s. Now, this one is one that I think a lot of people in their 20s struggle with, especially now, and that is listening to criticism constructively and using it to improve yourself. And this is one thing I wish I did more of, and it's probably my biggest regret of my 20s. I had this massive character flaw, and I was literally taking any bit of constructive criticism that was given to me personally. And now that I'm older, I love when people give me feedback. I've learned so much from other people since opening my mind to others' feedback, good and bad. And I know for a fact that I missed out on some amazing opportunities to get genuine advice from some really smart and successful people because I wasn't open to taking constructive criticism. And honestly, that makes me sad. I think the key takeaway here is that you need to remember that people are going to give you constructive feedback. They generally do it because they actually give a shit if you succeed or fail. If you don't listen to it and don't take it in, then they just won't offer it again. And that's how you miss out on the real opportunities. That's how you miss out on finding that mentor or that key piece of information that could really set the rest of your life up. And I wish I knew that in my 20s because I'm taking advantage of it now in my 30s. But if I had started taking advantage of that a decade ago, I'd be so much further ahead now. Now, guys, I promised you an 8th one, and I feel like this is super important. And like I said, I only thought about it once I started writing the script for this video. And that is, you should always back yourself. In your 20s, you really should back yourself and believe in your potential. Even if you don't feel like you have the skills or experience right now, take a step forward and be proud of what you can do right now. Even taking the time to watch this video and reflect on the learnings of others puts you way ahead of the curve. You need to make sure you find mentors and resources to help encourage you on this journey and surround yourself with people who bring out the best in you. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. They are part of the process. Believe in yourself and don't give up. With determination and hard work, honestly, anything is possible. Backing yourself means in believing that you have what it takes to reach your goals, regardless of how difficult it seems. So don't be afraid to take risks. My whole life has been about taking risks in my 30s. Every time I take an educated risk, an educated guess, I get success. And I wish I did more of that in my 20s. I wish I sat down and went, Jimmy, I know you're going to be successful. You need to back yourself. You need to understand that people may not see what you see right now, but you need to show them what you're about. And I just wish anyone watching this video understands that that's the most important thing. Your belief in yourself is more important than your actual skills. If you have an unwavering self-belief in yourself, then you will be successful. It's almost guaranteed. Now, you may step up along the way and you may trip up along the way, but that's life. That's what it's about. You've got to make those mistakes so you can learn from them. So you just take all these other things into consideration. But the most important thing is that you need to believe you're going to achieve success, whatever that looks like for you. So hopefully you got some value from the takeaways in this video. And if you enjoy it and you want to see more content like this and you haven't done it yet, make sure to hit the subscribe button before you leave. Take care, and I'll see you guys in the next video.